is going to cover what equivalent fractions are and how to simplify fractions. Okay, so an equivalent fraction is when you have two fractions that have different numbers, so they look different, but they're representing the same amount. So the easiest example for me to show you is 1 over 2, which is the same as 2 over 4. Okay. So let me show you what 1 over 2 looks like. 1 over 2, it is one thing split into two pieces, and it's 1 over 2, so I'm focusing on one of these pieces. 2 over 4, so 4 pieces, and I am focusing on 2 of these pieces. We'll ignore my bad drawing and we'll pretend that these pieces are actually the same. Okay, so as you can see from the drawing, they show the same amount, okay? In both of them, half my circle is coloured, but these numbers are different. How I figure out if something is an equivalent fraction, I could draw it, but sometimes it's a bit hard to look at it visually and tell. So another way I can do this is I will write it out. Now, for a fraction to be equivalent, I have to times or divide the top and the number by the same thing. So from here to here, okay, 1 times 2 gives you 2. So let me check on the bottom if that works. 2 times 2, and that does give me 4. So 2 over 4 is an equivalent fraction to 1 over 2. And I can go the other way around. I can do this direction, and it will be divide by 2 and divide by 2. So if I want to get a smaller number, okay? Alright, so let's try some examples. Let's try finding equivalent fractions for 1 over 3. I'm going to find, let's do 3 of them together, okay? Alright, so first thing I'm going to do, now you can have technically an infinite number of equivalent fractions because you can times by any number in the world. It doesn't matter as long as you keep it consistent on the top and the bottom. For the sake of being lazy and making this easy, I'm going to do a small number. So I'm going to do times by 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. Okay. And that's going to get me 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 2, that's 6. So here is one equivalent fraction of 1/3. Alright, let's do another one. Let's do 1 over 3 times 3 on the top and times 3 on the bottom. So 1 times 3, that's 3. 3 times 3, that's 9. So 3 over 9 is another equivalent fraction. Now, I don't have to just do it from the 1 over 3. Any fraction that is equivalent to 1 over 3, so for example my 3 over 9, any fraction equivalent to this one is going to be equivalent to this one. So I'm going to work off this one now, okay? Let's do times by 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. 3 times 2, that's going to give me 6. 9 times 2, that's 18. Alright, so this is another equivalent fraction. Remember, it doesn't matter what number I pick, as long as I keep it consistent on the top and the bottom. Alright, let's do some equivalent fractions for 6 over 10. So, 6 over 10, what's it equal to? So let's do times by 2 on the top first, and times by 2 on the bottom. So 6 times 2, that's going to be 12. 10 times 2, that's 20. Alright, let's do times by, let's do 10. That's easy. So 6 times 10, that would give me 60. 10 times 10, that gives me 100. Now, for my last example, I'm going to make a smaller version of this fraction, okay? So I do that by dividing. I have to have a look though. This one you need a bit more thinking. You need to think what you can divide by on the top and the bottom, okay? So they're even numbers, so I'm going to divide by 2 on the top and the bottom, okay? So 6 divided by 2, that gets me 3. 10 divided by 2, that gives me 5. So 3 over 5 is also an equivalent fraction. And because this fraction, the numbers are smaller than the original one, then this one is actually a simplified form of the original fraction. So let's take a look at simplified fractions now. When I'm simplifying a fraction, I'm trying to find the smallest equivalent fraction possible. Okay? And there's two ways to do this. So the first way we're going to talk about is finding the highest common factor. If you don't remember, a factor is a number that will multiply to give you your original number. So for example, factors of 9. Okay, I have 1 and 9 because 1 times 9 gets you to 9. So these two are factors. And I also have 3 as a factor because 3 times 3 gives you 9. Now let's look at my factors for 3. For 3, 1 times 3 gets you to 3. And in this example, that's all. So the highest common factor is the biggest number in both these lists. So I'll check. Alright, the biggest number in both these lists is 3. So 3 is going to be my highest common factor. Now to simplify, my next step is that I divide the top and the bottom by the highest common factor. Okay, so I do 3 divided by 3 and 9 divided by 3. And that gets me 3 divided by 3, that's 1. 9 divided by 3, that's 3. So 1 over 3 is my simplified fraction of 3 over 9. Let's try another example. Alright, so when we have large numbers, okay, it can take some time to figure out what the HCF is if we can't spot it right away. So another way we can do this is we can work our way down in steps instead. So I look at my two numbers, both of these are even numbers, so I know that they're divisible by 2. So if I want, I can divide by 2, or I can jump a step and I can see if I can divide the numbers by 4. 48, yeah, I can divide by that 4. 96, that's 4 less than 100, so I can also divide that by 4. So I'm going to do that first, okay? It just saves me a step. If you can't recognize that, well, feel free to go down by 2 instead, okay? Divide by 2. You will eventually get to the same place, it just might take another step or 2. So, alright, 48 divided by 4 and divide the bottom by 4, so 48 divided by 4, that's going to be 12. And 96 divided by 4, that's 24. Alright, so 12 over 24. I don't know if you guys can spot the highest common factor. I can, but let's go down in steps, okay? So let's pretend I don't know what the highest common factor between these two numbers is, and I'm not sure if 4 would work. So I would go down by, let's try 2. So I divide both numbers by 2. That gets me 6 here, 12 here. Alright, 6 and 12, I know that both of these I can divide by 6. So that would get me to 1 over 2. Okay. So it took a few steps, but overall it might be quicker than trying to make a list of factors and trying to figure out what the highest common factor is. So if you don't want to find highest common factor, feel free to use this method where you jump down in steps. Alright, so let's do another example where we're going to jump down in steps. So in this one, 84 over 189. You might notice that one of these numbers is odd. That means that we can't divide by 2. I need to figure out another number. Alright, so the other numbers I'm going to use is I'm going to pick small prime numbers, and I'll just work my way up the list of prime numbers. So prime numbers are numbers that don't have factors, and I'm going to try some, okay? So first thing I'm going to see is 3. Can I divide 84 by 3? Let me check. In a test, if you can't use your calculator, then you would probably just try to do some long division on the side. Okay, I can divide 84 by 3. Let's see if I can divide 189 by 3. Yep, I can do that as well. So first number I'm going to divide by is 3 on the top and the bottom. Okay, so that's going to get me 28 on the top and 63 on the bottom. Okay. Now, let's have a think. 28. What can I divide 28 by? Can I divide by 3? Nope. So let's move to a different number. Let's think. What's the next prime number? That's 5. Now, 28 doesn't end in a 5 or a 0, so I know that's out. So the next one would be 7. So let me test 7. I can divide 28 by 7, and I can also divide 63 by 7, so I'm going to do that. 28 divided by 7 is 4, and 63 divided by 7 gets me to 9. So my answer here is going to be 4 over 9, okay? So I just work my way down in steps. And you're picking odd prime numbers to test. Right. Now we know how to simplify fractions and what equivalent fractions are. Another way to figure out if a fraction is equivalent, well, we do need that because sometimes we can see fractions that don't look equivalent. Like, we can't think how to get, say, from 9 to 15 very easily. So another way we can check to see if they're equivalent is to try simplify them. Okay? You simplify them to the smallest fraction, and if you get to the same number, that's how you know you have an equivalent fraction. So for example, 3 over 9, if I simplify this one, I'll divide top and the bottom by 3. That gets me to 1 over 3. 5 over 15, I divide the top and the bottom by 5. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So you can see I've arrived at the same simplified fraction. That means these two numbers are equivalent. Okay, so that's everything I wanted to explain today. So you can try some practice questions, figuring out if these are equivalent fractions, and trying to simplify the fractions below. Right, enjoy.